Progesterone is known as the key mood and sleep stabilizer. And if you don't have those natural rises and falls of progesterone every month, no wonder these women are miserable and they have mood disorders. You don't need a pill that is full of synthetic hormones that wrecks your gut, makes you depressed, makes you suicidal, changes what kind of men you're attracted to. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Shift with Gina. As you know by now, this podcast is an accompaniment to my women's group, also called The Shift, hosted on Mighty Networks. We are in the middle of a meal prep challenge right now, which is really great for any women who are trying to get into the groove of cooking more often, so you eat out less, prepare nutritious, delicious food for your family. We're releasing 4 recipes every week for the next 4 weeks with a template to follow. And all the recipes have the macros calculated. We're also in the middle of a strength training challenge. And even when the challenge is going to be over, we are going to continue to do 4 workouts a week. So if you're a woman and you're looking for an online group of other women who are interested in health and wellness, nutrition, even hormonal health, how to get off the pill, all of that is in my group. You can click the link in the description to join. Today's episode is going to be about the birth control pill. You guys know I love to talk about the pill. Well, I love to rage against the pill because I believe it is one of the worst things to ever be handed to women in the history of the United States. The birth control pill has been marketed as one of the most liberating, freeing, important things to ever be given to women to help further women's rights and empowerment. But it's actually one of the worst things that we've been given. It's causing very high rates of depression, mental health issues, suicidal ideations, particularly when it's given to young girls, teenage age range, and that's happening a lot more often now. The pill is increasing women's risk to experience blood clots, stroke, heart attack. In many cases, it's even causing infertility. This is something that a lot of women are really starting to understand now, is that the pill causes women to be infertile. After they come off the pill, they just can't get pregnant. And doctors will gaslight them and make them believe that it's not the pill. It's just the fact that you were 25 years old when you went on the pill and you were much more fertile. And now you're 31 and you're just not as fertile anymore. That's the only reason why. But what I want to talk about today is the origins of the pill. Like I said, it's been marketed as this liberating, freeing thing given to women. But just like many other things pushed by progressives today, the birth control pill has a eugenic origin. So just like things, so the birth control pill, abortion, even the federal minimum wage, all of these things that are pushed by progressives today, they were actually originally eugenic efforts. They were all promoted as good things for society, but they've just been repackaged. They're just a repackaged form of eugenics. We can do an entirely different episode on the federal minimum wage, but essentially all of these things that progressives push today, the roots of these things are eugenic. And I think more people need to understand this, because I can't think of anything that was born out of eugenics that was good for society at the time and is good for society now. But of course, the left has repackaged a lot of these things to make them look good, especially abortion and the birth control pill. But let's talk about eugenics first, right? Because there's a little bit of, sometimes there's a misconception of what eugenics means. The word eugenics comes from the roots of 2 Greek words, good and origin, and it turned into an applied science that based breeding on genetics. The science of eugenics was performed under the guise that the human population could be perfected through selective breeding. And this became especially popular in the early 20th century. And by the 1930s, it was adopted by mainstream scientists, doctors, the general public, etc. There are 2 strands of eugenics. So this is important to understand as well. There's one strand called positive eugenics, which is about promoting childbearing among the fit, healthy classes of people. And you can argue that most societies in the history of the world adopted this positive form of eugenics because people want to make sure that their bloodline is preserved, that they further their bloodline, that they are procreating with healthy, fit people. Another way to say it is survival of the fittest. One could argue that there isn't really anything immoral about this. It's sort of human nature to want to procreate with healthy, strong individuals so that your children and your grandchildren and so on and so forth have a much better chance of surviving in the world, right? So there's nothing really wrong with positive eugenics. Right. And that you can say it in layman's terms. It's like, you want to marry and procreate with a very good looking person because a person's beauty or their attractiveness is often an indicator of their health. And so, a woman who has rosy cheeks and shiny hair and good skin, and she has good proportions in her body, and she has a pretty flat tummy. Like, those are all indicators of her health. Same with men. He's got a good head of hair. He's tall. He looks strong. Generally, not always, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but generally that indicates that the man is healthy. So this is the positive form of eugenics that I don't think anybody could really argue is immoral or wrong. However, there is another strand of eugenics called negative eugenics, which was concerned with the discouragement and suppression of certain people reproducing, people who were considered inferior stock, such as the disabled, racial minorities, immigrants, the poor. All of these people were thought to have hereditary issues. Yes, even people who were born into poverty were once thought to have a hereditary problem that made them poor. Right. So these are the thoughts that consumed the minds of scientists and professors in the early 20th century. And this is all going to make sense when we talk about the origins of the birth control pill. And this is how we ended up with the birth control pill, not positive eugenics, but negative eugenics. So one could certainly argue that this strand of eugenics, suppressing procreation, sterilizing certain people because of their whatever traits they believe were part of the inferior stock. It could be race, grace or color of their skin. It could be their ability, their socioeconomic status. So this, one could argue, especially from a Christian perspective, this is immoral. It is not right to sterilize people, especially against their will, which was being done in many places around the United States in the early 1900s. This is not moral. We are called by God to be fruitful and multiply. God told us in the Bible very clearly that we should fill the earth abundantly. Now, you have to understand that there's two things can be true at once. You can also want to procreate with someone who is healthy and strong, but you can also say that wanting to prevent forcing other people to not procreate is not moral. That's an immoral thing to do. But of course, that makes up the roots of the birth control pill. So you've probably heard of Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was a major leader in the birth control movement, which intersected perfectly with growing eugenics in America. The eugenics movement was picking up a lot of speed in the early 1900s. Sanger intentionally tried to weld the birth control movement with the eugenics movement for a couple different reasons. First, because she truly believed that the pill would be a successful tool for eugenics. But she also believed that welding the birth control movement with the eugenics movement would help it gain popularity and gain more support for the birth control movement. Eugenics then became a dominant theme at birth control conferences, and Sanger spoke often about the need to put an end to breeding by the unfit. And the unfit included people of color, the disabled, the poor, immigrants, etc. In 1920, Sanger said, "Birth control is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out the unfit and preventing the birth of defectives." That's a quote. She also used the term undesirable to refer to the mentally and physically defective, and she was in full support of forcibly sterilizing these people, making them infertile so they could not reproduce. Can you imagine if this language was used in the context of the birth control movement today? Can you imagine if there were any feminist or doctor or activist who used these words in connection with the birth control pill today? They would get canceled so fast it would make their head spin. But people are so quick to forget that the godmother of the pill and the birth control revolution was a huge fan of negative eugenics. This is what she wanted. This is what she wanted to see for the United States and probably for the world too. So what does she do next? She teamed up with controversial biologist Gregory Pincus and OB John Rock, was apparently a Catholic. And they worked on a synthetic form of progesterone, which is now known as progestin. And in order to get their new fancy birth control pill approved, they needed a clinical trial. And they knew that they would never be able to do a trial on U.S. soil because they knew they would never be able to convince people to sign off on the pill. They would never be able to get informed consent. So they turned their sights elsewhere. They turned their sights to Puerto Rico. So you've got Margaret Sanger, Gregory Pincus, and John Rock. This is a team that was hell-bent on creating a birth control pill. And at the time, don't forget, the birth control movement was welded with the eugenics movement. They wanted to create a pill to prevent certain women from reproducing. So Puerto Rico was the perfect place to run all of these shady trials because there was a ton of poverty, and it was already home to birth control clinics that were funded by the U.S. government under New Deal programs. We're learning a lot today, aren't we? I'm going to give you a name that you probably recognize. Clarence Gamble was an American eugenicist of the well-known Procter & Gamble. You probably have household products in your home right now that are from Procter & Gamble. Well, Gamble believed that Puerto Ricans should be wiped off the face of the planet to make room for more fit members of society. And that's why he supported the birth control trials that were going on there, as well as many other birth control clinics that were popping up in the US and various other countries. So he helped fund these birth control trials in Puerto Rico. And he was totally on board with Pincus and Rock and Sanger to help them get these clinical trials passed so they could get the birth control pill, approved in the United States to be used by American women. So this team recruited women in the poorest areas of San Juan who were uneducated because the educated women were too nervous about the potential side effects of the medication. They did not give informed consent. They were not on board with trying out the birth control pill. So they went directly to uneducated women and took advantage of them. These uneducated women were trying desperately to avoid pregnancy without having to resort to sterilization. So, these women living in poverty, they didn't want to have any more children because they were already suffering enough to take care of their kids. And so this team of researchers took advantage of them, and they were not given any safety information. These women were given no informed consent. They were given no information about the product from any doctors or researchers or experts. They were not told about the potential side effects. They were just given this magic pill that would help them not get pregnant, because this team of researchers knew that what these women wanted more than anything was to not get pregnant. The women who took the trial pills came forward to report the side effects, but they were deemed unreliable. So even the women who came forward and said, this is what I'm experiencing, this doesn't feel right, I don't like this, they were silenced and they were not listened to. The original pill, the original birth control pill, had much higher doses of hormones than today's pills and caused significant side effects like blood clots, severe nausea, even heart issues. The biologist Pincus, he said that the side effects such as anxiety or depression or other mental health issues did not warrant a reformulation of the pill. All he cared about was that the pill could prevent pregnancy. So even at the time, he and the other researchers did not think that these severe mental health issues, mood disorders that were happening to women as a result of the pill were a good enough reason to stop the trials or to go back to the drawing board and produce something different in the form of a pill. And, you fast forward to today and you see that women who are on the pill, they have an increased level of suicidal ideations. Like I said earlier, particularly when it comes to teenage girls, because when you give the pill to teenage girls before their bodies have fully developed, they have a much higher risk of dealing with mood disorders that could potentially even last the rest of their lives. And researchers knew about this from day one when they were doing these birth control trials, but they did not care because all they cared about was proving that the pill could work in preventing pregnancy. They didn't care what the side effects were. As long as it doesn't make you pregnant, it's a win. So 3 women died during these trials, but autopsies were not performed on their bodies, so that researchers couldn't exactly explain how the pill caused death. That's convenient, isn't it? 3 women died. Nobody knows exactly how the pill caused their death. We don't know if it was because of a stroke or blood clots or whatever. We just know that no autopsies were performed because it wasn't worth it on these uneducated, poor Puerto Rican women. Pincus and the other doctors, they didn't care about the side effects and they didn't even care about the deaths because what they found was that the pill was 100% effective at preventing pregnancy. So what did they do next? They went to a second trial, funded again by Gamble, but this time they went to women in mental asylums and they tested the pill on them without consent because these people were considered the filth of society. So the doctors and the fancy professors and experts didn't want them to procreate, so they forcibly sterilized them or they forcibly gave them the pill. It's nauseating. It's so disgusting. It really is. It makes me ill. And you have to understand, share this episode, please, with anyone who is supportive of the pill, because you have to understand that so many of the eugenic efforts that progressives used in the early 20th century, they have just been repackaged as these so-called compassionate, empowering things that are given to women today. Like, wait until I talk to you about abortion. I mean, you probably know the history of abortion yourselves. It's a no-brainer. It's so obvious. Like, you're killing off children. What children do you think that they want killed off? Of course, they want children killed off who come from poor, uneducated people because they actually believe that these people are the filth of society and they should not procreate. So the very first pill was called Enovid, and it was later approved in 1957 in the US. Women in America were so desperate to have it that they were willing to go through all the side effects, even increased risks of blood clots, major mood swings, mental health issues, etc. However, eugenics became closely tied to World War II and Germany. And because of this, the eugenics movement lost steam in the United States because they didn't want to be associated in any way with you-know-who. Can't say his name on YouTube or else you get banned. But you know who I'm talking about. So they tried to rewrite history. They tried to rewrite the history of the birth control pill and make it seem like Sanger and the pill had nothing to do with eugenics. Because at the time, all of the experts and fancy professors and smart scientists and research, they were so into the eugenics movement in the United States. It was like the hottest thing in the 1920s and 1930s. But then after World War II and the whole Germany disaster happened, they did not want to be associated with eugenics at all because it ended up having such a close name with Germany and you-know-who. So that's why they tried to erase the fact that Sanger, the godmother of the birth control movement and the godmother of the abortion movement, she was hell-bent on eugenics, and that's what she used the birth control pill for. They don't want you to know that. But the truth is, the birth control pill and eugenics are inseparable. They are inseparable. From the pill's inception, it was arm in arm with eugenics. And I just find it sad that today women have been programmed to believe that the birth control pill is just the best thing since sliced bread. But it was originally used to prevent unfit women from reproducing. And today we're just supposed to believe all of a sudden that this is a good thing for women? Tell me what else in history that was used for eugenics originally is now considered a good thing. What else do we do what else do we use in society today that is considered good that came from eugenics? Nothing. But for some reason, all these people, all these women have fallen for the lie that the birth control pill is a wonderful thing for women when it was used to eradicate certain populations. And now you're just going to flip it over its head several decades later and say that it's like the best thing ever for women and it empowers women. No, it's making women suicidal. It's making them sick. It's making them infertile. This is exactly what they wanted with poor, uneducated women. And now it's just being handed out to anyone. The FDA approved, wasn't the FDA. US, no, I forgot. Maybe, no, it wasn't FDA, but somebody just approved the first over-the-counter pill, the mini pill. Now they're literally just handing it out like candy to anyone who shows up. And every time I talk about the pill, I always get questions like, well, why do you only talk about the negative side effects of the pill? Why don't you ever talk about the benefits of the pill? Okay, let me break this down for you. So first, let's go over what are the so-called benefits of the birth control pill. So if you look it up online, if you ask any conventional medical doctor or mainstream OBGYNs, they'll tell you that it lowers your risk of uterine cancer. It lowers your risk of ovarian cysts. It reduces heavy bleeding and makes your periods less painful. Okay, that's true. All of those things are true. But that's like saying that the benefits of cocaine are that it helps you be more focused and concentrate on whatever's in front of you, and it helps you be more productive. Because it's true, isn't it? It's true that when you do a line of coke, you're going to be much more productive. Look at the guys in the Wolf of Wall Street. They do tons of drugs, right? That's a huge benefit of cocaine. It helps you stay really focused. That's the same logic, because all of the so-called benefits of the birth control pill can be achieved naturally without all of the negative side effects that wreck women's bodies. Literally all of them. You want to lower your risk for uterine cancer, your risk for ovarian cysts. You want to heal your period so you have less heavy bleeding and less pain and your period's more regular. Guess what? You can do all of that naturally. You can lower your risk of uterine cancer and ovarian cysts by being pregnant and having children. You can do all of this naturally. You don't need a pill that is full of synthetic hormones that wrecks your gut, makes you depressed, makes you suicidal, changes what kind of men you're attracted to, and shuts down the connection between your brain and your ovaries so you don't ovulate at all. That's not healthy for a woman in her childbearing years. It's not healthy to not ovulate. You must ovulate for so many different reasons. Even just for the production of progesterone. Progesterone is known as the key mood and sleep stabilizer. And if you don't have those natural rises and falls of progesterone every month, no wonder these women are miserable and they have mood disorders. Ovulation is important for your health as a woman in your childbearing years, even if you don't want to have children right now. But the birth control pill eliminates ovulation. So all of these so-called benefits of the birth control pill, they're not really benefits. They compare. When you compare them to the long list of negative side effects and how it totally overrides your natural hormonal system, it completely erases it. Okay, it lowers your risk for uterine cancer, but you're depressed, suicidal, and you're infertile, and your gut is wrecked, and you have SIBO now. Again, like I said, it's the same thing as saying like, oh, the benefits of cocaine, you should do cocaine for studying for school because, you can concentrate better. It's gaslighting. You're gaslighting women. And it makes me so sick to my stomach because women deserve better than this. And it just makes me ill when I think about how many women have fallen for this nonsense. The birth control pill was originally used for eugenics. If you don't remember anything else I say today, pass it along to someone who needs to know. Because if it was used for eugenics 100 years ago, what do you think it's being used for now? And I know when I talk about the birth control pill, I get some comments that are like, look, I have endometriosis and the pill was the only thing that helped me. That makes me sad that there are so many women who are struggling with endometriosis. And I hope that you get the help that you need. But let me tell you something, the pill did not help you or heal you. It just masked the symptoms temporarily, and it did not help you get to the root cause of endometriosis. And if you struggle with endometriosis, and if you really want to reduce your symptoms in the long term, and you don't want to deal with endometriosis, you have to get to the root cause. And you're not going to get there if you're taking the pill. You're not going to find out what those root causes are if you're totally shutting down your natural hormonal cycle and you're replacing everything with synthetic pseudohormones. Women deserve to know better than this. I mean, it makes me upset that so many of these conventional medical doctors, even the good-hearted ones who have good intentions, they've been brainwashed and programmed by the conventional medical system to not educate women and their patients. And it's starting so young now. Girls are being given the pill at 14, 15 years old. It's like, No wonder. No wonder we're seeing higher rates than ever of mental illness and loneliness. So look, share this episode. I don't do ads on here. All I ask is that you share the episode with somebody who needs to hear it, because more women need to understand what the true origins and the true effects of the birth control pill are. You don't need it to prevent pregnancy. You don't need it to make your periods more manageable, because you don't actually have a period on the pill. I know I've said this a million times on the show already. You can watch my past episodes to explain how you don't actually have a period on the pill. And that's not good for you either. As a woman, you should be menstruating during your childbearing years. That is a healthy thing that your body is meant to do. Nothing is by accident. God created our bodies perfectly with intention. So if your estrogen rises and falls and your progesterone rises and falls at certain times during the month, there's a reason for that. And overriding that and stopping your body from doing all these natural hormonal things is not good for you. So don't take the birth control pill. I think that's all I've got for today. I mean, I just wanted to give you the origins of the pill. And like I said, share the episode. If you want to, here's what I wanted to share with you. On August 23rd, I'm hosting an online workshop with a fertility awareness educator named Mairead Sutoff. She's been teaching fertility awareness and cycle tracking for years, I think 10 years now. And she does these online workshops a lot where she teaches women in just 2 hours how to naturally track your cycle, how to understand your cervical mucus patterns, how to understand basal body temperature, all of these biomarkers that play a really big role in understanding menstruation, ovulation, whether you want to prevent pregnancy naturally or whether you want to successfully get pregnant. So on August 23rd, is the online workshop with Mairead. I'm just going to be hosting it. Mairead is going to be teaching it. It's about 2 hours long. Bring a notebook. Tickets are going to go on sale soon. General admission tickets are only $30. These kinds of workshops are usually like a couple $100, but we want to just make this really accessible. This time is really just the ticket price is really just used for the platform we're going to use and for Mairead's time, because I want to give women an alternative to things like the pill. So if you want to learn about your cycle, if you want to naturally prevent pregnancy, join us. If the link is ready by the time this episode is released, I'll put it in the description. It should be ready. And you can share it with your friends too. And come learn about what's going on with your cycle so you can better take care of yourselves. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining, and see you next time. Bye.